Clinton's subpoenaed. Bill and Hillary lead a long list of officials called before the House Oversight Committee as it investigates all things Jeffrey Epstein. Plus, taking over in Gaza, the White House says the U.S. should be in charge of aid distribution to starving Palestinians. And a Tennessee man put to death Tuesday for the murders of his girlfriend and her 2 young daughters, but it's his pain that has his lawyer demanding an investigation. Those stories and more today, Wednesday, August 6th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. President Trump wants to take over aid distribution in Gaza. The situation there on the ground is as bleak as it gets for citizens. U.S. officials told Axios on Tuesday that the president is, quote, not thrilled at the prospect of taking over humanitarian aid and distribution, but he sees it as the only way to address growing concerns over famine. And the United Nations just released some alarming new numbers. The UN estimates 90% of aid trucks that have gone into Gaza likely failed to make it to their intended destination, thanks to looting from starving Palestinians or what they called forcefully armed actors. Now, Israel has continued to blame Hamas for the aid not getting to where it needs to go, but the UN stopped short of offering specifics on who is blocking their progress. President Trump was asked about this late yesterday. Here's some of what he said.
We are there now trying to get people fed. As you know, $60 million was given by the United States fairly recently to supply food and a lot of food, frankly, for the people of Gaza that are obviously not doing too well with the food. And I know Israel's going to help us with that in terms of distribution and also money. We also have the Arab states are going to help us with that in terms of the money and possibly distribution.
We're also learning more about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan for a full occupation of Gaza, the one I first told you about yesterday. Experts are warning that it will likely be the bloodiest part of the war. One counterterrorism source that the Post spoke to says a full occupation will come with new risks that the Israeli Defense Forces have yet to really face during the war. Things like ambushes, improvised explosions, and sniper fire from insurgents. And families of the 20 remaining Israeli hostages fear that ratcheting up the fighting in these last Hamas strongholds in Gaza could put their loved ones at risk too. And now over to will he or won't he? As we've discussed right here for weeks, Jerome Powell getting the axe as the chair of the Federal Reserve at one point seemed practically inevitable. As it stands, though, President Trump looks like he's going to wait it out 10 months. That's when Powell's term expires. Until then, he's talking up possible replacements. During a phone interview with CNBC, the president all but confirmed 2 candidates for the job: Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, and Kevin Warsh, who served on the Fed Board of Governors from 2006 to 2011. The president said he had 2 other names on his list, but he wouldn't say who they were or whether or not they're also named Kevin. The president's big issue with the current Fed chair has to do with interest rates. Trump reiterating his opinion that Powell has been too slow to lower those rates, and he claims it is costing the country trillions of dollars. Now, a disturbing story from Tennessee, where 69-year-old Byron Black was put to death on Tuesday by lethal injection, crying in pain as the drugs ended his life. The death penalty was carried out despite a legal battle over concerns that a defibrillator he had implanted in his heart would repeatedly shock him once the lethal chemicals spread throughout his body. And it seems like that's exactly what happened. As he lay with his hands and chest restrained, he was moaning, quote, "Oh, it's hurting so bad." Now, he was officially declared dead 10 minutes after the injection was administered, and Black's lawyer promised to investigate, saying that the drug was not acting the way that Tennessee state experts said that it would. She said, quote, "The state of Tennessee killed a gentle, kind, fragile, intellectually disabled man in a violation of the laws of our country simply because they could." Black was convicted of murdering his girlfriend and her 2 young daughters in 1988. Now to our big story, a fresh round of subpoenas in the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein saga. The Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee is compelling the testimony of nearly a dozen former federal officials and politicians. And the biggest names in the bunch? Bill and Hillary Clinton. The chair of the committee is Kentucky Congressman James Comer, not to be confused with former FBI Director James Comey, and that is an important distinction in this story. Congressman Comer wrote a cover letter to the former president's subpoena. In it, he points out that President Clinton himself copped to flying on Epstein's private plane 4 times in the early 2000s, writing that Clinton was, quote, even pictured receiving a massage from one of Mr. Epstein's victims. Now, Comer went on to bring up rumors that the former president had pressured the magazine Vanity Fair, quote, not to publish sex trafficking allegations against your good friend Mr. Epstein. And he questioned whether or not Clinton had ever visited Epstein's island. Now, following Epstein's 2019 arrest, Clinton told Newsweek he hadn't spoken to the billionaire businessman in well over a decade and said he knew nothing about his crimes. Now, President Trump, a former friend of Epstein who broke off contact with the financier before his legal troubles began, had much of the same reaction after the sex offender's long list of heinous crimes became public. The president recently reiterating that he kicked Epstein off of his Mar-a-Lago property many years ago. Now, these subpoenas request Hillary Clinton to appear on October 9th and Bill Clinton on October 14th. Now, their reps did not immediately respond to requests for comment. And for more on this, I'm joined now by the Post's Washington bureau chief, Josh Christensen. So, Josh, who else got subpoenaed? And what is the House committee looking for here? What's the goal?
Yeah, in addition to Bill and Hillary Clinton receiving subpoenas, there were 9 other subpoenas sent out. Most of them were to former attorneys general, stretching from the Biden administration on down to the George W. Bush administration. There were also subpoenas sent to former FBI directors Robert Mueller and James Comey. And a lot of these subpoenas are worded the same in terms of what they're asking for. They're asking them to come in for depositions to talk about everything they might have known about the Epstein case, the Epstein prosecution, which was a federal prosecution, really kicked off with his arrest in July 2019, but something that has become of more and more concern in this Trump administration, based in large part on some of the president's promises he made during the campaign to release the so-called Epstein files.
Now, as I heard you list off those names, I mean, we have former president, former secretary of state, really high-ranking officials, FBI directors. Do they actually expect all of these people to show up?
Well, when I talked to a former federal prosecutor about this, and somebody who actually specialized in sex crimes and also in cases when parties are compelled to come before government bodies, it looks like essentially, in the case of Bill Clinton, he can invoke executive privilege and he won't have to show up. In many cases, the attorneys general will also be able to take that option. In some cases, the attorneys general might just say, you know, this wasn't under my purview. I wasn't involved in this, you know, like Merrick Garland in the last administration, you know, this was all wrapped up before he took office. You might have some more interest in figures who were around during the first time Epstein was charged in the mid-2000s and actually pleaded guilty to soliciting sex from a minor. That would have touched on Attorney General under George W. Bush. But a lot of these people have some sorts of legal recourses they can pursue in order to avoid testifying. But the main thing that this prosecutor pointed out to me was also that many of them don't know sufficiently what was happening because they weren't parties to the investigation. And he pointed out that Trump's former labor secretary, Alex Acosta, who resigned days after Epstein was arrested in July 2019, is the main party who should have been included in these subpoenas and was not. He should have been the 12th subpoena. If anything, he should have been the only subpoena, as this prosecutor was telling me, because Acosta was in the South Florida U.S. Attorney's Office when that plea agreement was reached with Jeffrey Epstein in 2008, I believe. And that plea agreement basically put him in prison for no more than 13 months, and much of it was even on work release for soliciting sex for a minor. So this is something that many kind of independent experts who are trained in law are looking at and saying, this might be a good headline, you know, you're subpoenaing a former president, but it turns out that some of the parties that can give you the most information about this weren't even included on the letterhead.
It'll be interesting to see if the public pressure campaign mounts because of that, since it does seem like there has been reaction to some of the public pushback there. And just a reminder for people, that particular plea agreement in that sort of 2007, 2008 area in Florida is the one that Ghislaine Maxwell's trying to use to get her conviction overturned. So there's so many different layers here. But before I let you go, in addition to the subpoenas, we also got a closer look at a trove of never before seen photos that the New York Times published from inside of Epstein's house. So can you tell me a bit more about what we're learning from that release?
Yeah, it's almost like looking into Ripley's Believe It or Not. I mean, you got a first copy edition of Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. You have a signed dollar bill from Bill Gates. You have all these curiosities that he kept around him that were artifacts showing his connections to these very well-connected, very rich, very powerful people. And it's something that certainly will cause a lot of public speculation. I don't know if any of the artifacts that were commented on or seen in the photos will add anything to the House inquiry, for that matter, the Justice Department inquiry, since it's clearly already aware of these. But it's something for the public to kind of chew on and think about, good questions that they can be asking their, representatives to bring forward, especially as the House is looking into this.
The first edition of Lolita inside of the House, it's almost too
on the nose.
On the nose, yeah, to even be believed. But Josh Christensen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture is always looking for new ways to help American ranchers protect their cattle from wolves. Drones have, of course, started to play a huge role because why not? The technique here is fascinating. The drones use infrared cameras to find wolves lurking around looking for a tasty ribeye. But how do you scare them away from the cows? With Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver. I'm not joking. I told you this is fascinating. The Wall Street Journal was the first to report that these wolf drones scare off the predators by using alarming sounds blasting from drones equipped with speakers. Sounds like fireworks, gunshots, and people arguing. And for people arguing, they like to use the audio from Driver and Johansson's fighting scene in the film Marriage Story. The Department of Agriculture also says AC/DC's song Thunderstruck works well. What's great about the program, aside from the absurdity of Adam Driver inadvertent wolf tamer, is that the use of loud sounds began as a way to mitigate the problem without shooting and killing the wolves. The American gray wolf is an endangered species after all, and I looked up pictures. They are stunning creatures. May I never see one in real life because I would absolutely get eaten for trying to pet it. And finally today, we have to have a talk about Grimace, the big purple blob who, along with Ronald McDonald and the Hamburglar, has been a Mickey D's mainstay for decades. There has been a lot of speculation and even some serious debate over the years about what Grimace is. I mean, think about it. Large, fuzzy, purple, conical? It doesn't really fit into a category. What makes it more mysterious? McDonald's is so cagey about it, refusing to answer the question or answering and taking it back or just changing it altogether. Now, some people think he's supposed to be a milkshake, which, Back in 2012, McDonald's corporate Twitter account replied to a since-deleted post, quote, "Grimace is the embodiment of a milkshake, though others still insist he's a taste bud." A taste bud? A taste bud? Fast forward 13 years, and the Daily Mail is now saying just that McDonald's has revealed that Grimace is, in fact, an anthropomorphic taste bud. But here's the rub. There's no proof, no evidence that McDonald's confirmed that in the year of our Lord 2025. Now, here at The Post, we take our fast food-related journalism very seriously, so I dug a bit deeper to find out just where this new old claim comes from. And here is what I came up with. I got nothing. Nada. Bupkis. Diddly squat. I don't even know what to tell you. What do you think he is? A taste bud cannot be the answer. That is quite possibly the worst answer to the original question of what is Grimace. That is it for today. It has to be. Where could I possibly go after Grimace is a taste bud? Was the goal to make me Grimace? Because mission accomplished, I guess. If you want to go down a Grimace rabbit hole, which I did, or dig into anything else we talked about today, head to the New York Post in print or online and make sure you like and subscribe to the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. A taste bud. Seriously, I will not move on from this. I need a better answer.